Thanks, everybody. Kia ora. My name is Maia, like he was saying. Really happy to be here. I came down for Tech Summit and then just wanted to meet more people. And so far, everybody at Christchurch has been really delightful. So doing a really strong sell for why Christchurch is a really great place. So I've been doing this talk actually throughout the year, and I have made some updates and changes, but also surprisingly, some things have stayed the same too. So when it comes to AI, obviously it's it's injecting itself in every part of our workflows, and we ourselves are interested, and our bosses are interested in getting it in. And I work in the accessibility space specifically, and so when there's new trends like AI or new anything, for me, I'm thinking about how does that intersect with accessibility, and what are the implications for accessibility, and what does it mean for us as technologists to be making things and making them more accessible? So that's the question that I have and that I want to be answering. A little bit about me first. I think it'd be useful if this was on. Like Andrew said, I'm a certified web accessibility specialist. Basically what the letters mean is that I know what I'm talking about. This is what I do day in and day out, reading the guidelines, understanding them, and then interpreting them and explaining them in ways that actually make sense to busy people like you. I'm the founder and managing director of a consultancy that does exactly that, based up in Wellington, doing things like auditing and consulting and training. My background is actually as a dev. So before I got into accessibility, I was working at an agency as a front-end dev, kind of stumbled into accessibility, caught the bug, as we say, and haven't turned back since. And while I have a dev background, what I really like about accessibility is it really intersects with a lot of different roles, and accessibility, you can't do it just in one domain. It really crosses over all the domains, and that's what I really like about it. So this is a UX talk, or like the UX meetup, and I really like talking to designers and UX people as well, because we're all part of making it happen. So we'll start first with some audience participation. So I'm going to ask you how many people in New Zealand have a disability. I'll show you 3 numbers, and we'll just do show of hands. So how many people think there are 5% of people in New Zealand have a disability? Okay, 25%? 65%. Okay, a lot of you did your homework. It's 25%. So
some people were told me yesterday.
That's true. So 25%. That's what is that number? Well, that's 1 in 4. But also put in other terms, that's 1.1 million people. The entire population of Auckland has a disability. And that's just a baseline minimum number, because those are people who in a survey have ticked off in a box that, yes, I identify as being disabled or have a certain amount of support that I need that qualifies me as disabled. But there's actually so much more. So yes, it might include what we initially think, those physical disabilities like blindness, low vision, motor impairments, but also temporary, permanent temporary or situational. For example, I'm right-handed. So if I break my right hand or my right arm, that's going to impact the way that I use technology. Hopefully I'll recover from that, and that makes it temporary. But I'm still, for a moment, temporarily disabled when I'm using technology. We also have neurodiversity. We're learning so much more every day about neurodiversity, about learning disabilities and cognitive disabilities, all that kind of stuff. And people who are ADHD or autistic might not necessarily identify as disabled, might not necessarily tick on a box that they're disabled, might not even know, have a diagnosis. So am I really allowed to say that I'm ADHD because I don't have a diagnosis, but I feel like I am, that kind of gray area, right? So it also includes these, when we're thinking about accessibility, it also includes our neurodiverse friends as well. And the last group of people I want to talk about is the older population too. So 46% of people age 65 plus have a disability. And it makes sense because as we age, our eyesight gets weaker, our cognition gets weaker, our dexterity gets weaker. And 65 plus, okay, so that's some blazingly white-haired lady hunched over a walker, right? And yes, it does, but include that person. But 65 plus, that's also my mom. And looking at the audience, that's probably your parents as well. So 65 plus isn't actually all that old and all that out of reach. I can tell you for sure that my mom uses technology probably more than I do. She has more devices than I do, does more online shopping than I do. So, this is still a really significant population group who may not necessarily identify as being disabled, although a lot of them certainly do have disabilities as well. And so we take all of these groups of people, and they're all using technology every day, right? Like if I break my hand, I still need to eat food. In fact, I'm probably more likely to do my grocery shopping online because of my injury. It's great that our neurodiverse friends are probably in this room tonight to make this evening more colorful and interesting, and they can be here because they can access the meetup online and find out the information that they need in order to get here. I had an old coworker who was blind in one eye and loved video games as well. And finally, I mentioned my mom. She's retired, living her best life, but has to do her banking very often, to make sure that she's in a right state in that retirement era. So all of these people are using technology on a day-to-day. Now, let's look at how many homepages are inaccessible. So this is statistics based off of a study by the WebAIM, the Web Accessibility in Mind. They do 1 million project. So every year they scan automatically 1 million of the top homepages. And based on that, they get a sense of what the compliance is that year. So if you're a data nerd, it's great. So based on that research, I'm going to do 3 numbers. We'll do a raise of hands. So how many pages based on the WebAIM million report are inaccessible? Who thinks 55% are inaccessible? 70% of homepages are inaccessible. 95% of pages are inaccessible. All right, y'all are pessimists, but it's true. So the studies found that 95% of homepages have automatically detected accessibility bugs. And those are just the automatically detected bugs, right? So automation only catches about 10 to 20% of issues, so that's a bare minimum number. So if 95% of homepages are inaccessible, we have an average of 51 bugs per page. So somebody who's using assistive technology or has a disability or falls under any of those categories that we talked about before, they're constantly encountering bugs, up to 51 bugs on one homepage. So what all this means is that we have this group of people who are using technology on a day-to-day, but are facing barriers constantly that we are building on our digital content. So then the question comes, can AI help us? Can AI help us make sure that these digital platforms are accessible for people? And the answer to that in short is yeah, at least to a certain extent. So AI has actually existed for a really long time, and not quite in the Gen AI form that we know it, but it's existed for a while. So predictive text, that's artificial intelligence, and that's existed before. So thankfully, because of predictive text, you can, if you have dyslexia or you are English as a second language, you can still send the text that you want to send, or write that CV that you want to, so that you can get the job that you deserve to get, right? Voice recognition was actually created specifically for people with disabilities, people who had motor impairments. So voice recognition was created so that they can interact with their technology more easily. And now we use it as a day-to-day, calling on Alexa even when we don't ask her. And then we take those two, and we have auto captioning and transcripts. And we actually saw that accelerate during the period of COVID, right? Because those technologies existed and the need even more existed, we saw it happening more and more, and now our meetings are all the more accessible to all sorts of people. And really, why stop there as well? You can take auto captioning, instead of just translating it to words, you can translate it into sign language. And so there's companies that are using avatars and AI to take those transcripts and interpret them into sign language so that even more people can understand what's going on in the meeting. And there's even more examples. More and more we're finding that AI is actually extremely helpful for people with disabilities. A lot of neurodiverse people are finding it really useful for organization, task management, a lot of that kind of stuff. staying on top of things, interpreting things. I was talking to a friend the other day who was saying that transcripts are really helpful for her to make sure that she knows that she caught everything in a meeting, because listening is difficult for her to keep up. So there's lots of applications of AI helping people with disabilities. Even more, another example is alt text, for example. So we can use AI to generate alt text for us as well, which is one of the problems that exists on the web for accessibility. So I have, as an example, I took an image and I just put it into ChatGPT and I asked it to create an alt text, and it did. I mean, it's rather verbose, so I probably want to go in and like fine tune it, but that is pretty effective. And actually so much so that technology companies decided to leverage that. So there's a company called Scribely, and that's exactly what they do. So they do use AI to generate bulk images. Specifically, they focus on like operationalizing image descriptions. So they focus on the human process still being necessary to make sure that those alt texts are accurate. But if you're dealing with a lot of images, then you can use AI to make sure that at least images have at least alt text on them, which is a lot better than having no alt text at all in a lot of cases. When it comes to alt text, just while we're talking about it, it's important to compare AI with when it comes to the alt text generation. So I have two sources, one by Adrian Roselli called AI Generated Images from AI Generated Prompts. And so he does a really cool game of giving AI some prompts and giving it some images and kind of seeing what the outputs are, and you kind of you play along with them as well. And then another one by Dries, comparing local large language models for alt text generation. So it also looks at the different LLMs and see how they produce it. So if you're looking to use AI to produce alt text, it can definitely be effective in that way. And I would say to try out different ones. Don't just pick one and go with it, because they have different performances based on what you're looking for. And of course, you can train them different ways. So AI can also recognize images as well and recognize the content of the images, as we know, when it produces alt text. But it can also recognize the text inside an image. So for example, if there's a menu, a lot of restaurants have like JPEGs or PNGs as their menus. But images of text are really not accessible, particularly for people who are using screen readers. Screen readers can't make sense of a JPEG. It's an image of text, so it actually doesn't contain anything there. Instead, what you can do is you can take a menu and you can put it into ChatGPT and it can read it out for you. So for example, when you're going out to a restaurant and you want to read that menu ahead of time, maybe you're going on a cheeky date or you're hanging out with some friends, you want to know what's going on ahead of time. In this way, it gives a lot more freedom and independence so that you don't have to have somebody reading it to you if you're not able to read it on your own. And once again, companies were like, oh yeah, that seems really useful. So there's a company called Be My Eyes that has now introduced another version, Be My AI. So Be My Eyes is a company that connects people who have vision needs with people who have vision and can provide vision help in order for that person to be able to see something that they need. So for example, if I'm low vision and I'm in the grocery store and I'm picking up like a can of this can, right? And I'm trying to figure out what the flavor on it is, and they look really similar, this one versus the other one, and I can't really see it. So I can call on Be My Eyes, and a volunteer can read it for me and tell me, oh yeah, this is the raspberry one, this is the one that you want. And I can be like, cool, thanks, see you later. So it's that same action, but using AI, which is really useful for, sometimes you don't really want to talk to somebody, so you don't actually have to ask for help. But also when it comes to independence, privacy needs, things if you're doing banking or health, things, that kind of thing. So it really provides a lot more independence and dignity and control for individuals as well. Of course, there's always a caveat, there's always a but, right? So what's really important is that all of these have alternative inputs. Like even the last one I was talking about, if the AI doesn't work, they say on their website that you can then just contact a volunteer instead. We were talking about voice activation before. I speak with a North American accent, and so they're programmed pretty well to understand me. Sometimes they still don't. but you all in the room probably have gotten some weird things that like voice activation and Alexis and Siri's just don't understand what you're saying with a Kiwi accent or a different kind of accent. So having the ability to then just like type in what you want to say is really important. The same is true if you have, for example, a stutter or some sort of speech impediment. Maybe you had a stroke, and so it affects the way that you're speaking, and it's not quite the same way that I'm speaking anymore and that it's programmed to. So having alternatives is really important for any of these kinds of inputs. And then, of course, we also have to remember the accuracy and hallucination issue when it comes to AI. And that's really important, again, when you're relying on it to be able to see for you, you need to make sure that it's reliable. So when we were talking about the bulk to alt text company, for example, they really emphasize the human review part of it. When I was talking about you picking an AI, making sure that you're checking in and every now and then. You don't have to check all the images that it creates alt text for, but do check-ins every now and then to make sure that it's doing it appropriately, doing what you want. Okay, so these are the ways in which we're leveraging AI in order to help people with disabilities in kind of like a product way on their day-to-day. But like I said, we're all technologists and we're all the ones building technology. And so I think it's a really valuable question to ask, how are we building things in a way that's accessible? And specifically, we're going to look at design, but this can apply for coding as well. Can we use AI to create accessible design? So first off, let's talk about how AI actually works. So AI, when we talk about AI, what we're actually talking about is an LLM. It's a large language model. Essentially, it's a predicting machine. That's what it is. It's just really, really good at predicting things, particularly language. It's really good at predicting the most probable next word. That's why it can generate a bunch of text for us that seems pretty good. And it does that by recognizing patterns. That's what it does when we're talking about AI. So yeah. So when we're looking at that, it's good at pattern recognition and pattern recognition and probability, right? Which humans are notoriously bad at doing. But what humans are really good at is we're a lot better at that context-based problem solving. So when we're looking at the problems that we're trying to get AI to solve, really what we need to be asking is, where does it fit in? So for accessibility, where does accessibility fit in when it comes to patterns and probability and context-based problem solving? That's the question, really. So let's explore that. I have an example here. So I have an image on the screen. It's a circle with an eye in it. Can you tell me what the alt text for this image might be?
Information, help.
Information, help.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yep. So we might have image with alt text equals information. Except that what about if it was a button, right? If it's a button, then actually it should be describing the function of the button. So it should be something more like describing the input field. So if we have the input field of what's your favorite robot, then the button, the alt text should actually be what is your robot, because that's the function of the button. But what if it was next to the word information? If that icon is next to the word information, actually we wanted to have an alt text of null, because for somebody who's using a screen reader, for example, it would read out the word information twice, and that would be repetitive and redundant. So in that case, we would just have alt equals null, and that way you get the word information only being read out once. So we see that there's a lot more like complexity and nuance to even this one simple thing, right? There's also different ways that we can implement it as well. So, and this is only just one example, like what is the alt text, right? But there's a lot more questions that we ask too. Like what is the relationship it has with other elements on the page? That's, if the word information is there, then that will reflect about what the alt text is. What state does it have? So if it's a button, for example, that is going to influence like the state announcement of whether it's expanded or collapsed. Also what we visually make it look like. Maybe we want to have it look like something different. And then we get into keyboarding, right? Like what's the right tabbing order? What is the appropriate keyboard behavior for something like this? Does it have a good focus state, a color, contrast, all that kind of stuff? These are the questions that we ask as an accessibility specialist, but also as designers. These are the questions that you're asking. And this is where the nuance with accessibility lives. So we know that an image should have an alt tag, but what that alt text should be, that's where the nuance lives, and that's where the real questions lie. So when we're looking as well for, I was looking at Lovable, and so this person, Diana Kalipina, so she has a video where she, or like a YouTube channel where she does a bunch of accessibility stuff, and she decided to look through Lovable and see how it works. And basically she gave it a prompt of make me a website that's fully compliant to WCAG 2.2. And on the surface it actually was pretty good. But it's when we started to dig a little bit deeper and ask those kinds of questions that we saw on the previous slide, that's when we started to see more issues. So to me, what this says is that like AI can help on those surface level things, as in it could say, oh, you see an image, it should have an alt text. But where it fails is the nuance of, and those more complicated kind of questions. It's also just like fun to know that the Lovable homepage, their marketing page, has 54 automatically detected issues. So that, how much faith you might have in like what other web pages they can build in an accessible way. I'll put that to you. So when it comes to design, ultimately, context matters. And I'm sure that this is something that you have experienced day to day, and devs as well, right? When we're developing as well, it's also the context matters. And in fact, I even asked ChatGPT, I asked it, what do you struggle with? And it told me that it struggles with ambiguous and context-dependent issues. It specifically knows, it doesn't know anything. It's specifically saying that it's not good at context. So when we're looking at our Venn diagram of patterns and probability and context-based problem solving, and we're asking ourselves what what problems are we trying to ask AI to solve, and this should be something that we're asking all the time, I would say that accessibility lies more in the context base and a little bit in the pattern and the problem solving. And that's where we saw that Lovable, where like on the surface it was good, and then on the deeper questions it was less good. So the next element that I want to cover is also, how does it learn? It learns off of data sets, right? Who remembers the statistic of the data set that we talked about earlier on, of the WebAIM Million Project? How many websites are not accessible? 95% of homepages are not accessible. So this is the data sets that we're learning, that AI is learning off of, right? And actually, the way that AI works is it's pattern recognition. So it's looking at where, what commonalities and what is normal, and then like rejecting outliers. Which, when you have 95% as one thing, then actually the accessible pages are the ones that are the outliers, and the inaccessible ones are, the normal ones. And the data sets that it's picking off of home pages, but it's also picking off of like Stack Overflow. I don't know if that's a design that you use that in design as well, but like it's like students' code, and where people are asking questions and people are posting not necessarily correct responses. So it's taking data from everywhere, and it's not necessarily correct. And then the more like AI slop that we create, like in terms of images as well, but also in terms of code, like people who are playing around with AI and trying it out, but don't think about accessibility, they're generating even more products. And then the number of talks that I've been to that they're like, see, it works. And they're like, and it's just so inaccessible, but they're saying that it works. And therefore they're telling AI, yes, you did a good job. So it's only reinforcing this idea that like inaccessible code is the right code that it should be learning. I have another example as well. So Jeremy Andrew Davis, that's a name that I can pronounce at least. So he's a content creator, and he did an exercise. This is about at least a year old now. So whatever. I'd like to take that as a caveat. But he was working with Midjourney, and he asked Midjourney to produce an image of an autistic person. And Midjourney generated 148 images. Of those 148, 2 of them were female presenting. Only 5 were over the age of 30. All of them were white, and none of them were smiling. The reality is that AI trains on biased data. And for that matter, we know it's ableist data, and we also know that it's sexist and it's racist as well. There's lots of examples of that too, right? So when we're leaning on AI, we need to be thinking about those things, right? So when we ask ourselves, can AI build accessible software and build accessible designs? I think it's kind of the wrong question that we're asking, or at least we're looking at the wrong place. Because the reality is that disability is not a technology problem, it's a social problem. Disability has existed well before and apart from technology. It's the way that we build buildings and we don't consider the needs of our patrons. It's the discriminatory hiring practices and education practices that lead to disabled people being more likely to be unemployed, more likely to be underemployed, and paid less than non-disabled people. It has to do with thinking disability is a niche market, even though there's $1.2 billion in New Zealand alone, and 28% of companies find that they have higher revenues when they do focus on accessibility. It's the idea that it's something new and novel and we need to throw a new technology at, even though the most common errors have been that the WebAMillion study found, the top 5 issues have been the same for the past 5 years. If you're looking to improve the accessibility of your sites and your products, just focus on those 5 things. You don't need AI to do those things. You just need to know that they're there and that those are the things that you should focus on. Those have existed before, and frankly, they're going to exist after AI as well. So AI doesn't mean that we can stop thinking about disabled users. If anything, it means that we need to be thinking about it more. I think that that's the human element that we bring to it, and especially as UX designers, like it's in the name user experience. It's about thinking about users. And when we're working with AI, and it's not to say that we can't work with it at all, but rather it's when we're working with it, we need to be thinking about disabled users. It's our job to be refocusing this technology onto the user. So I took a slide from the talk that was there last month for those who were there, just to kind of bridge a little bit there, although you don't need the context for it because I wasn't there either, so I don't have the context. But in terms of like doing the research and testing, ideation, design, communication, whatever your realm is in the design space, be thinking about screen reader users, keyboard users, ADHD, dyslexia, those kinds of things. That's in the AI world, in the AI era, that's the job that you have, is to be pulling those people in because AI is not thinking about them, it doesn't think. AI is biased in a way that it's not going to be considering and including those needs. In terms of prompting, we have the CARE model that the Nielsen Norman group created that we can use for prompting. And so we want to be thinking about accessibility specifically in the rules and examples portion of it. So basically when you're prompting AI, if you're using it, you're giving it the context, you're giving a specific ask, and then you're providing guardrails around it to say, here's what I want. So for rules, this is like me, like my gift to you kind of thing. So for rules, say that it must be WCAG compliant, WCAG 2.2 AA compliant. It's okay if you don't know what that means, but that's what you want it to have, or for it to be accessible. AI also doesn't know what that actually means though. So I created a document, it's on my website, so there's a QR code. If QR codes doesn't work for you, it's alephaccessibility.net/resources and it'll be right there for you. It's all of the WCAG criteria written in plain English that was created by a different organization called Artwork. So I took all of the plain language English and put it just like basically in a document where you could just copy and paste that and try that out. Caveat, I personally haven't tried it, so I don't know. And you do need some sort of, you will want to have some sort of knowledge and understanding of what it is. But at the very least, you can try it, and so that you're at least, when you are prompting AI, you can give it those guardrails and at least try to be a little bit more specific to it. Because again, when you're saying to AI, hey, be accessible, AI does not know what that means. So say images need to have alt text, things need to be keyboard accessible, designs need to have a keyboard focus state, that kind of thing. So that'll be there. If you use it, please do, and give it, let me know how it is. I'd be really curious how it works in the real world, and what does and doesn't work. But so that's prompting, but ultimately the way that we build accessibility into our workflows is a lot wider than just throwing AI at it and calling it good. It requires embedding it into our processes from the design phase, into dev and into testing as well. Thinking about it throughout our processes will make it a lot cheaper, easier to implement than doing it once the designs have already been finalized, and now we need to go back and change the colors and go talk to the stakeholders and get reapprovals and all that kind of stuff. We accomplish it with executive level policies. Really getting executive buy-in is a really key way. Is really key to making accessibility successful at an organization. It's not the only way, but it's very valuable. Upskilling is really important. Knowing what to look for. So you can have those prompts, but knowing what accessibility is, again, it's not washing your hands of the need to know. If anything, AI is pointing us and telling us that we need to know even more about this human side of things and upskilling ourselves in accessibility. Accessibility expertise, I mean, that's where I come in, but you can pick a person on your team, or you can have somebody in-house that trains themselves, so that it's not the whole team that needs to become experts, but at least you have a touch point. There's lots of different ways to build expertise into your teams. And then finally is testing with disabled users. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you cannot know if something is usable by disabled people until you ask them. And that's how you make sure that your products are accessible. So when we're thinking about accessibility, ultimately, what I want you to take away is that accessibility is not something to solve. It's something that we build. And again, as designers, as human-centered people, it's the way that we inject humanity back into the rush that is AI moving into our processes. Thank you. Let's talk.
I just wonder, I think there's very good examples about the mobiles, and I'm wondering about the Gemini we have for the Android or some other Alexa for iPhones. But is there anything through AI for the websites, desktop applications?
What do you mean?
I mean, embedding AI for the accessibility for any of the websites that can be accessed. That could be anything navigated, or for example, if you take University of Canterbury's website, and that could be accessible through mobiles, tablets, or the desktops, right? So we have the screen narrators or the screen readers, and I say that could be done through AI in the mobiles, but some sort of existing AI technologies in the mobiles can support the accessibility.
I don't understand that part, that you can use AI on mobile for screen. That part I don't understand.
Probably something like Gemini.
Okay.
Gemini in any of the Android phone. Will that actually assist the accessibility sort of stuff? That is, I'll split the questions into two.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably if we talk about the mobiles. But you said like there are some things that we can embed AI in mobile accessibility. So I'm just wondering, how do you do that after you build a website and you access through mobile, and if you want to embed AI for that from the end user perspective?
I don't think I understand.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's a tough question. So actually, I'll give the background of my question.
Okay, yeah.
I'm working for one of the websites, which you see. And typically, we do have the WC 82.2 standards we follow. And that is we know the standards and we implement it. But by end of the day, users face the difficulties and we do have the gaps. So if you want to embed the implementation, AI for the implementation or the testing, so how we can bring that for the desktop web applications, that is one question. So for the implementation from the developers end as well as testing from the testers end, how do you bring AI for that?
So like into like testing processes?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like linters. So I think we're talking about automation, like accessibility automation. So I didn't, just for the sake of time, I didn't include like those slides. I have slides about automation. So a lot of time we're like, oh, but can AI but can we like lean on technology for a little bit and like get AI to do some of the things? And the answer is yes. It's called automation and it already exists. So there's lots of tools that exist, like automated scanners, where you can just go to a website and like hit scan and it'll automatically detect a bunch of bugs for you. But you can also embed it into your workflows and processes. So from a dev perspective, you can implement it in your code, like as a linter or part of the Git process. If that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. But also in design, you can do things like using color contrast checkers. I also saw when I was at Tech Summit, one of the companies had an LLM that was creating test cases for it. Getting like basically like a checklist of sorts, like allowing testers to be able to check for accessibility. You need to know a bit about accessibility and make sure that you're checking those test cases to make sure that they're accurate and that they apply to the scenario. So there's a lot of automated tools that exist already that can support accessibility across web and mobile.
Yeah. So I explored some of them, but very difficult with the ARIA tags identification.
Yeah.
That's one of the gaps I figured out. So any idea about that? How to get it through identification of the ARIA tags when they scan the pages?
Yeah, I mean, it's context based, right? Like the best thing is to not use ARIA tags. That's the first rule of ARIA is don't use it. A lot of it's based on context, and that's again why embedding accessibility is not just throw technology on it and then it'll solve it, right? Like it's about understanding the context and learning about it. Like I don't know what it can't detect ARIA. I don't know like what it's struggling with, and probably we need to educate the devs and designers around it so that they can understand why they're using ARIA in the first place. So it's kind of a bigger picture than just let's throw it at it and then it'll solve accessibility. Yeah.
There's a Chrome extension you might be able to track with X that does the scan, page scan, and it does best practice stuff in terms of coding and stuff as well. It does relatively well at saying, hey, look at this.
Okay.
You still need to understand, but you still need to do a manual review of things as well. But that one might help you to kind of give a little bit more of an indication of where to look at.
Right.
But yeah, the Chrome extension.
Right.
So the extensions like X will look through pragmatically and find the low-hanging fruit type thing. Do you know of anything that looks more from a usability perspective? I guess if you're using a touch device, that sort of thing, where it scans and looks at the hit point size and figures out where things are only accessible on hovering, those sorts of things that can help with those touch devices?
Short answer, no, that doesn't exist. So target size is part of accessibility, and so again, I was talking to somebody from Tech Summit who they created an LLM, and I was chatting with her and asking these exact questions. Okay, well, so can we create an LLM for accessibility? I was trying to, I'm like, I get these questions, let me throw it at the AI and LLM expert. Like, I want the answers. And essentially, what she's saying is that she was like, we are like very far away from it. Basically, the rules are too vague still. Remember, we're just talking about a robot. We're talking about a sophisticated robot, but it's still a robot that works like a calculator, works like any computer, where you have to tell it the rule and then it can follow the rule. And sometimes it can extrapolate, but it's based on patterns, right? So it's actually just gotten a bunch of different rules that it can, based on these 5 rules, I can assume I can make a guess of what rule 6 will be. But if it doesn't know what the rules are, then it can't know. And the thing with accessibility and with UX is that they're still too vague and they're still too context-based. You can give it some rules, but then tomorrow you're going to create a design that's never seen before, and it won't have an idea of how to do that. Yeah.
Quick question. You said that on your resources page you created some prompts. How many pages is that? Because my main concern is around context windows with LLMs. So if you put too much stuff, Gemini is great. It's my go-to now because it has about 1 million tokens for the context window. But do you think there could be any concerns there as the number of accessibility requirements grows? Maybe we can embed it potentially automatically. I know that Anthropic have been writing out a lot of different security practices. Have they mentioned anything about embedding these accessibility requirements automatically into their large language models?
So fair, and I know a lot less in those restrictions than you do, so that's a great point to bring up. That's why reading the list and then picking the prompts that but that apply to your specific project is probably valuable. Like for example, there's like 6 of them that have to do with videos. And so if you're not creating a design with a video, like you don't need to include those criteria. Or even if you are including a design with video, then of those 6 ones, like they're actually 6 because they're about pre-recorded and live, like they make a distinction between those. So no, but an AI might like get wires crossed because you have those distinctions. So understanding what those 6 mean and then pulling out the meaning from them would be more valuable. So yeah, so knowing what you're doing or training your AI like one by one. So saying, okay, here's the first criteria, here's the plain English. Also think about this edge case, that edge case, and then you do it one by one so that you're breaking it down that way. Ultimately, the answer to that though is that you're learning about accessibility, right? Like if you're training your AI to be accessible, I assume that means that you have some level of accessibility knowledge as well, in order to be able to train it to be able to catch those things. And like we were saying, it's not gonna catch everything because you can't come up with all of the edge cases in the world. But it requires you learning something, or at least somebody on your team learning about it, which as far as my research has shown, it doesn't exist yet, it doesn't exist yet. I'll leave it at that, yeah. I was thinking, like I know like some companies that they have, like Visa for example, they have, but this is before AI, they have for their testers, they have test cases for them, and they have like hundreds of test cases that are all about accessibility, because they had an accessibility team who went in and like created a bunch of all of the rules, and so their testers have a checklist that they go through, and it's like very long and very extensive. And so I imagine what Visa might be doing now is taking that, and I'm sure there's other companies as well that have similar things who have focused on accessibility. They're taking those test cases and they're training whatever internal AIs that they're using. That's what I imagine that they're doing. But of course, you're never getting rid of your QAs. You still need your QAs to be able to like make sure that they're accurate and again thinking of those edge cases. Yeah.
You mean you train the AI model with big WCAG 2.0 standards, and then you train them to do blah blah blah? Yeah,
like you could train it to be able to recognize things. Give it the rules that you want it to follow. You need to know what rules you want it to follow. But if you have an internal AI, then you can be training it to be doing that. You can tell it to exclude some training data that you disagree with and include training data that you do agree with. I'm sure there's things about like privacy and stuff as well that companies are like, this is how we're training our thing, because like copyright issues is like a massive issue. So we're not going to be using like stolen content in order to train our AI, that kind of thing. Yeah.
How to ensure it meets the needs of diverse people with different disabilities? Because what's good for one person is completely awful to another person with a different disability.
Yeah. So the standard, what we're talking about, the WCAG standards, WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So that's a guideline that says you need to be meeting like certain criteria. There's a total of 55 of them. So you need to be meeting those requirements. So things like color contrast and keyboard accessibility, you want to be meeting. That's where, and then to see beyond that, after you meet that, if this particular widget we've styled it passes accessibility standards, is it actually accessible or is it intuitive? That kind of thing. That's where you want to be testing with users. That's the best way to know. I work with a person who does screen reader. She's fully blind and she uses a screen reader on a day-to-day. And we do audits together all the time. And it's just so interesting. Like I do a day in, day out, and like you think you know, and then you have somebody come along and show you something. And so seeing her using her screen reader, and the way that like combo boxes are written, or like some fancy widget that like I read the code. And so I'm like, oh yeah, there's this problem or that problem, or there's no problems. And she comes in and is like, I don't understand what's going on. I'm going all over the place. Like this is saying this is saying that. So yeah, like the value of having like a real person coming in and testing your things.
And it also changes depending on the age and the culture. So you really can get it really wrong.
Yeah, totally, right? There's like research that shows like for older people, older people tend to just like hit buttons really like quickly without necessarily like reading it or knowing what it is, but they're like, so just like that automatic reflex of just hit the button and they don't really know why. And then also like changing the context has like a greater impact on older people than younger people. Just like it's change, you know, and it's just like something cognitively that you're just not used to anymore. Yeah, and then culturally, like that's a whole other can of worms too. Yeah, so testing is always, and so when it comes to user testing, like if you are doing, whether you get to like spearhead or participate in it, or you have somebody else who does it, when you're user testing, that's an area as well where you can start thinking about disabled users as well. So, you know, you cast a wide net and you try to get whoever, but make sure in that group is specifically people with disabilities, or do separate testing specifically with disabled users. Don't just hope that your net has caught like the right people kind of thing. Be really intentional about, you know, oh, we really need to get this age group, we really need to get this cultural background, we really need to get a diverse set of abilities as well. Yeah.
I was curious about your thoughts around the version 3 spec and how that's progressing. I'm hearing they're dealing with the issues of context.
Yeah.
It's they're still trying to get there, but I don't know. I'd love to hear your impressions of how that's going.
I have not read it yet. It's coming up on my feed all the time, but I'm like here and focused on this, and so I'm like I need to sit down and read it properly. So for context, the standards that we were talking about. So I've been referencing WCAG 2.2 AA. Again, you don't have to know, but it's basically, so it's the guideline and then it's the version. So 2.2, like 1.0 came out whenever. Then 2008, version 2.0 came out. 2018, 2.2. So just different versions, and they come up with different rules. And so now they're like starting to create a 3.0 version. And so 3.0 is really like reimagining WCAG, and instead of listing criteria, it's doing a lot more being context-based. And like less prescriptive and more, like technology agnostic and taking mobile into consideration and all that kind of stuff. So like being a lot more, because the last time, I mean, it was updated, 2.2 was updated in 2023, but before that it was 2018, which like is such a long time ago in technology, right? Like that was the last time the standard was updated. And so there's like some stuff about mobile, but like really there isn't. So that's what we're talking about. And I'm saying that I haven't read it yet, so I'll get back to you in like a week.
Maybe a slightly different question. You're mentioning that there was variations that need to be accounted for. I was wondering, like, could you train an LLM on those variations and start building upon that? Could that be a way forward?
Yeah, it could be. I haven't done it. I don't know who has or is. One could. And again, if one does, one needs to know about it, which again goes back to like, you can't escape learning. You can't escape learning about your users. You can't escape learning about disabled people because it's part of it. So if you want to create an LLM that will be like know how to detect accessibility, you need to learn about it. And once you learn about it, then you realize how complicated it is.
Given that testing with people with disabilities is the gold standard, how would you give advice to people to find and connect with people within their community to maybe include in usability testing?
Yeah, so there's companies that do user testing with disabled people specifically. I've connected with so we have participants that and people that we know who have a very varied abilities. So we can put you in touch with them and conduct user testing that way. If you don't want to talk to us for whatever, and it's not just me, there's a bunch of companies, so if you don't like me, that's fine. But there's lots of different companies that do it as well, so you can reach out to them. If you don't want to do that, you can always reach out to Blind Low Vision, New Zealand, and organizations specifically like Deaf Aotearoa, that kind of thing. We work a lot, disability organizations. Reach out to them and say, hey, we want to do some user testing, whatever. Make sure that you're paying your participants for their time, because they're giving you their time and energy, and so you should compensate them for it, is what I would say. But reach out and also think about different disabilities as well. It's likely that you have somebody who works at your office who is colorblind. Likely, so just ask around if somebody's okay to disclose that. There's probably somebody who's dyslexic as well, if somebody wants to disclose that, and they can test your things, and you could get information that way as well. So you might have disability like within your workspace. You do have disability within your workspace that you could also tap into if people feel comfortable doing that as well.
Maybe a general question. Is that only about the disabled people or non-technical people as well?
Yeah, so it definitely flows over, right? Like accessibility and WCAG and all that kind of stuff started because of disability, but it really benefits everybody. A good example of that is, we call it the cut curb effect. So on the sidewalk, as you're walking, and when you approach an intersection, the sidewalk slants down onto the street. And so that's called a cut curb, so the curb is cut, right? So that was created specifically for people with wheelchairs, because what was found was like people were in the wheelchair, and as soon as you hit a curb, like that limited you. You literally needed somebody to like pick you up, put you down, so that you can cross the road and then pick you up again. And you know, like that inhibited so many people's independence to be able to navigate around the world. So there's lots of advocacy, and that was created, and that's like now a standard in design in the world. But we all benefit from it, right? Like it's useful for if you have like a pram or like luggage, or you broke your leg, or you just like feeling like weak that day, or you're on your phone and then you feel the ground go down and you're like, I need to pay attention, right? So it benefits everybody. And so in the same way, you know, having good color contrast, that's useful for everybody, right? Like if you're low vision, certainly, but if you're out in the sun and you're trying to see what it says and it's really bright, having good color contrast is really useful. I'm sure like we're all technology people, so when we're filling out a form, we're tabbing through, right? And you just want to tab, 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 tab. So it's a good thing that it's keyboard accessible, right? And that you can probably see, or hopefully you can see where your keyboard focus is as well. So you can, as you're tabbing through the form, you can see where you're going. So there's lots of benefits to not just disabled people. That's who we're hoping to help the most, but so many people benefit from, and including tech, like people who are not tech literate, all like definitely benefit from that as well. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the WCAG, and that's the main one that we kind of do in New Zealand, but there are also the STEM 508 and the European standards that have just become a lot more of a recognised thing. Do you guys do anything in that space, and have you found any complications with AI between the standards? Because they do reference and align a lot with WCAG, but there are some differences and extensions as well.
Yeah, they essentially all point to WCAG. So different countries have different rules about accessibility. So in New Zealand, we have like digital like web standards, and it says that all government agencies have to adhere to WCAG. WCAG was created by the W3C, so the internet people, like they created the standard, and basically every country is basically like, do that is essentially how they do it, and then they have some caveats or additions or changes, but they basically point to that guideline and then like have their own thing. Yeah. So the short answer is no, I haven't found that much, like because they all align with WCAG and they all align with the underlying principles of accessibility, of making sure things are predictable, text-based, keyboard accessible, like all that kind of stuff. So I can't really see how there would be like much conflict, especially with AI, like how AI would disrupt that and make one standard, like one legal framework work, but not with WCAG kind of thing. Yeah, can't really see it being inconsistent like that. Yeah.
Do you reckon like a browser supposed to have the accessibilities tab, or specific, like we have the option of desktop mode or something like accessibility mode, where people can actually see the different side? Because in general, like for the normal people where they don't need certain sort of thing, they might be using the regular site, or in that case, like you can have the separate version of it, the same way we are doing for the mobile and desktop version.
Yeah. So that used to be having a separate accessible and non-accessible website. So that was a practice for a short period of time. If you heard my talk yesterday, you know that there's an example of Tesco, which is an American company. I don't remember what they do. They're a grocery chain. And in 2001, they had their standard site and then they had their accessible site. And they launched it and they were really excited about it. And I had a quote, but in 2023, basically, that they were like, yeah, we scrapped the standard site and we're just going with the accessible site. Because they found that all users, regardless of who they were, preferred the accessible site to the standard site.
Connected to the same question, do you reckon like having that separate one will improve more accessibility options for the people than the normal site, which is for everyone? Like having the separate site will have the more options, because of there you can experiment more different ideas for the different aspects of disabilities.
So, like what the study found was that people preferred that accessible site. It works better for everybody. Essentially, having a standard site that is not considering the needs of different users, even if you don't ascribe as disabled, it's still useful that you can see things well. And when it comes to accessibility, a lot of accessibility comes down to like best practice. So from a code perspective, we're talking about like not using ARIA when you don't need to, just using native HTML. From a design perspective, it's like let's get rid of the fancy fluffiness for now, and let's focus on making sure the color contrast is good. And if you disagree with the color palette, and I think this color palette's good, you think that color palette's good, there's an objective way to know whether a color palette is good. It tells us to have labels on forms, so that you're not just using placeholder text on a form, so that it says like name and password, and you type in your username, and then the label disappears because it was placeholder text, and then you don't remember, was it looking for my username? Was it asking for my name? Was it asking for my email? Was it asking for my password? Because I got an error and I don't know why. So it enforces just have a label, right? And that benefits everybody. It doesn't matter like what your ability is. It's just like nice to have a label there. So that kind of stuff is part of having an accessible website, which just benefits everybody. And so it brings us back to those like first principles about design, and then you can add like fancy things on top of that. But that's why all users tend to prefer the accessible site over the non-accessible. So I said it was a practice that happened briefly in 2001. It's something that doesn't happen anymore. We don't tend to, it's not practice anymore to have two separate sites. It's just also a lot of maintenance, because then you have to duplicate everything and you have to update everything twice all the time. So it's better to just have your one site and make it accessible. Everybody will be happier that way.
Probably have time for just a couple more questions.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the right question to ask, but recently I work for an NGO and we just update our website. And I don't know if you have any good examples of enhanced accessibility on mobile device, because we just find out probably 90% of the audience use mobile device to access to our website.
Yeah.
Do you have any good example how AI can enhance the accessibility of mobile device?
AI specifically? I mean, having good practices is probably your best bet, having good colors and making sure things are keyboard accessible, but also things like on your phone, if you have things that require specific gestures, because not everybody can do those gestures. Like if I have to slide from here to here, like if I have shaky hands and I need to slide from here to here, it might be difficult for me to make a straight line. So you want to avoid those kinds of things on mobile. And again, that's something that AI and automated tools they don't know how to detect that stuff. How a drag and drop, and make sure that the drag and drop isn't a straight line. They're not able to do that yet. Yeah.
Because one of the contexts I think about is if someone with disability, and they can visit our website on the mobile phone, and then maybe he couldn't even move his hands and on the type, but he can use a voice yes, right? But you can't really do that on laptop or.
I mean, you can. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can have voice activation on your laptop. I was using it. It's pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It does a whole thing where you tell it to click, and then it's really cool. And if I might say click Maia Miller, and if it doesn't know how to click it, I can say show grid, I think, and then it'll divide it into a grid of 9, and then I'll say go to grid 5. So I'll say go to 5. I can't remember what the commands are. 5, and then it'll go to 5, and then it'll draw another grid. It'll zoom in and draw another grid, and then another grid until it gets to the thing, and then I could say click click 3 and then it'll click on that. Yeah, so yeah, you can do it on laptop as well. Yeah, and then your phones have screen readers built into them automatically. So if you ever want to try a screen reader, it's really cool and really interesting. You can turn it on your phone, you don't have to pay for it. My tip is to just know how to turn it off. It can be very overwhelming. So yeah.
You mentioned as well about people with low tech abilities as well. Are there international guidelines for good design or areas or international standards for helping people gain accessibility to websites? I know this because I worked a lot with victims of rape and sexual assault, and a lot of them were actually over the age of 55. So we were designing websites to help them gain access to resources and charities that could help them, but half of them couldn't engage with our site because they didn't actually know how to engage with digital tools. So curious to know if there are any international standards on good design.
Are there international standards on good design?
For low tech users.
Yeah, it's not my area. Like design more broadly is not my area. Like gov.uk is a pretty solid resource that we use from code and design for like solid stuff, and they might have information there. It's not my area, so I don't fully know. Good question. Hope so. Yeah, do you know?
No, but I was going to ask you, I had another question which kind of relates back, possibly. I was going to ask you what your sort of favourite websites and apps were for accessibility, and I would sort of make a guess that those sites are probably really good for people in those types of situations as well. The low tech.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like the WebAIM just the WebAIM website is really good, especially if you want to learn more about accessibility. So yeah, WebAIM, how you would think it's spelled, webaim.org. They have lots of resources about like what is accessibility, why is it important. They have a W3C, I think separate from that, has a pattern library as well. So I actually reference the pattern library from W3C a lot when I'm doing audits, and I'm like, here's how you make an accessible accordion, like here's a pattern already. So those are 2 websites that I am referring to constantly, and they have really good practices there. Yeah, and of course I can't think of anything else on top of my head, but yeah, those are good resources in general if you ever want to explore them.
I was going to ask a similar question but AI related. Any AI tools like OpenAI with accessibility capabilities? So for example, if I want to bring down the test designs, I tried with OpenAI but not 100% satisfied.
No, like it's just something that it's not being factored in, and like, so like I showed you, like Lovable, their homepage has 54 automatic issues with it. I just had a thing. Oh yeah, Figma. So earlier this year, Figma just released Figma sites, and they had a huge launch, and then make everything like super easy and simple and whatever. And they released it the week before Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and it was insultingly bad about how inaccessible their sites were. And they were like, oh well, it's in beta, so which, I mean, like people using the beta don't have disabilities, and then B, like it's the whole idea of like embedding it from the beginning. Like why would you release a product and then like build accessibility on top of it afterwards? It's just like so much more expensive and hard, like just difficult. You have to redo it basically. So like companies, there are some companies that care about accessibility, and things like Apple and Google and Microsoft and stuff, they're innovating with accessibility as well. But then there's other companies that are not. So you need to be mindful about those. Yeah.
It's probably enough. You probably
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to make friends down in Christchurch, so I have more reasons to come back. I have stickers on the snack table, so go get stickers and snacks. And then, come talk to me as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.